2 years ago, I stumbled upon a manga that was titled Onani Master Kurosawa. When looking at the translated title, which was Masturbation Master Kurosawa, I laughed quite a bit, but what I didn't know was that it would be the greatest manga I would read. With a title like Masturbation Master Kurosawa, anyone would just brush it off as a typical dumb harem manga or something along the lines of that. I did the same, but I was also desperate for something that would remotely entertain me at the time. I started reading it, and the first thing I see is a dude jacking off in the girl's toilet. Even when I was expecting something like this, I didn't think it would be right off the bat. I was curious though. Okay, firstly, why the hell is this dude jacking off at school? Secondly, why in the girl's bathroom of all places? The only way to find out was to keep reading. Turns out, this is Kurosawa, and his hobby, or rather, his daily activity, is to jack off in the girl's bathroom while thinking about a girl in his class. Okay, before you click away or brush this off, please listen a little longer. Kurosawa is a 14-year-old student who doesn't really have any real friends or aspirations. He's not a genius, but he's still pretty smart. He enjoys reading and, well, cranking it. From the looks of it, this isn't his first time jacking off in the girl's bathroom, since he's calm and cautious about it. When he finally thinks he has escaped without anyone noticing, this happens. What used to be a calm and collected Kurosawa becomes nervous and unsure what to do. He analyzes the small girl and throws out the excuse he has prepared for this very situation. The small girl walks past Kurosawa without saying a single word. This meeting is what changed Kurosawa's life, as well as the small, squirrel-like girls. After this event, we see Kurosawa's daily school life. From this we can tell that he doesn't like anyone in his class and he just insults them in his head. When invited to go to karaoke by the leader of the otakus, named Nagaoka Keiji, our protagonist swiftly makes up an excuse while insulting the group in his head. Again, he does go to the girl's bathroom to jack off to a girl in his class. You can tell by now that this dude isn't that nice or cool to hang out with or around. I like that he was like this though. It made him more relatable, to me at least. Another thing I noticed was how damn good the art was. It was sketchy, dull, and had really well drawn faces. Kurosawa's face especially. When alone or annoyed, his eyes become narrow and the shading on his face becomes darker. His shit-eating grin is something that I really liked about how the artist Takuma Yokota handled. When trying to look friendly, his eyes widen and his smile becomes more passive. One other thing that I really liked about the art is the reference to other manga and anime that was done. He also does this in another series he drew, Chikan Otoko, another manga I absolutely love. I plan on making a video on that as well. Moving on, we get more insight into other characters such as the small squirrel character from before. Her name is Kitahara Aya, and from her introduction to the class, we can tell that she's being bullied. She's specifically being targeted by Sugawa Mako and her friend. Both of these characters are important, so keep them in mind. Throughout the next couple chapters, we see Kitahara getting bullied constantly. Each time they get more and more extreme. It gets to the point where even Kurosawa gets irritated. Irritated enough to quote-unquote make them fall. By this, he meant to take the two girls' uniforms and masturbate on them. This plan to make them fall worked. It humiliated them in front of the class to the point where it drove them to tears. All while Kurosawa idly sits there with his shit-eating grin. At this point I was hooked. Wow, this dude is an asshole and I love it, said 10th grade Robbie. Everything about this event was amazing to me and it was so damn satisfying as well. After this, we are told that a class trip is upcoming and that they must make groups of 5. Kurosawa ended up in a group with Nagaoka, Kitahara, and Pizza. I don't think that's his real name, but that's what they call him. The 5th member comes into play later on. Everything is normal for Kurosawa for a bit until someone comes knocking on the store that he was masturbating in. Kept his cool until the person says his name. It was Kitahara, and she had come with a favor to ask. Kitahara asks for another girl to suffer the same fate as Sugawa. This baffles Kurosawa, all while Kitahara continues to deconstruct Kurosawa's plan and continues to shock him. She says she wants to become the catcher in the girl's toilet, which is an obvious reference to the catcher in the rye. In a way, Kitahara is blackmailing Kurosawa to do this for her, since otherwise she'll tell everyone what he has done and what he is doing. You can tell from this conversation that Kitahara is a damaged individual I mean, after all that bullying, who wouldn't? And so a very unusual partnership began between the two. In the next chapter, we are formally introduced to the next major character, Takigawa Magister, known to me as Kurosawa's Reason. This character has just as big an impact on Kurosawa's life as Kitahara, if not more. Their first real interaction is when she asks to sit on the same table as him while he was reading. This turned into a conversation of sorts, all while Kurosawa tries to figure out why she sat at the table he was sitting. Pushed that thought to the back of his mind though, because he had a request to fulfill. For the next few chapters, he continues to fulfill requests for Kitahara, all while he grows closer with Takigawa through books. Around this time is when Kurosawa goes on the class trip, mentioned before. Kurosawa continues to become closer to Takigawa, since she decided to hang out with his group instead of hers. Kurosawa actually starts to enjoy himself on the trip. We can actually see him with a genuine smile on his face due to happiness. However, on the very next page, this small amount of peace is thrown out the window. Kitahara is back, and she has another request. This time it was a bit different. On top of targeting another girl, Kitahara wanted Kurosawa to get her out of the relationship she was forced into with Pizza-kun. While we see Kurosawa performing both plans, we are given some more interactions with Takigawa and some comedy. I don't know why it's taken me so long to mention this, but this manga is really fucking funny when it wants to be. Especially the first half of the manga. On top of the references to other manga, it also has its own unique style of comedy where it's kind of pretty close to absurdism. Moving on though, in the end of the trip, Kurosawa never made the target fall. He couldn't. He grew conscious. The reason why Kitahara wanted him to target the person in the first place was that she was in a happy relationship. That's it. They weren't assholes or did anything to Kitahara, but she was just jealous and didn't like that they were in a happy relationship. At this point, you can tell that Kitahara is continuing to go down the spiral while Kurosawa is trying to climb up one without even noticing. Kurosawa starts growing even closer to Takigawa and also goes to karaoke with the otakus. By force, if anything else. Here we get one of the most important moments in the manga. The otakus sing and dance Hara Hara Yukai. What sort of incantation is this? Okay, for real this time. After the dance, Kurosawa goes outside and runs into Takigawa. This leads to them going to watch a movie and grab some food. Feels like some sort of date, right? Throughout this date, Kurosawa grows more and more entranced with Takigawa. He also makes a promise of sorts to become a famous author by entering a famous school and get a degree. This thought made Kurosawa smile. Immediately after this though, Kurosawa's heart starts to ache and he gets the biggest boner in the history of boners. He tries to control it by masturbating while thinking of Takigawa. After doing so, he pukes. He pukes because of his disgust towards himself for tainting the girl he loves. He didn't realize this until the end of the chapter though. After this, he grows even closer to Takigawa. When she tells Kurosawa about her troubled past, she opens up to him more and more by going deeper and deeper into her troubled past and why she's so different to what she used to be. I just think overall the way the author handled Takigawa and Kurosawa's relationship up to this point is amazing. It feels like they have become closer naturally and this friendship is changing Kurosawa for the better. I mentioned before that I think of Takigawa as Kurosawa's quote-unquote reason. By this I meant it's because she's the thing that is keeping Kurosawa in check. Without her, he would go insane and do things that would hurt the people, or rather, the person he loves. With that said, Kitahara enters the scene once again, this time requesting to make Takigawa fall. Kurosawa obviously tries to refuse, but Kitahara retorts saying that she knows he likes Takigawa. He still refuses and goes home. All throughout his trip home and at home, he constantly thinks of Takigawa, so he decides to go outside and meet Takigawa. She looks happy and Kurosawa asks what happened. She says, "It's a secret until tomorrow." Kitahara shows up behind him after Takigawa leaves and tells him that he will regret not accepting her request. Kurosawa brushes us off and goes to bed happily. He goes to school the next day to find out that our boy, Nagaoka, has a girlfriend. Now, I'm sure everyone knows where this was going. Yeah, it's Takigawa. Kurosawa's understandably in a daze, unsure as to what's going on. Kurosawa lost his reason, just like that. His reason to stay sane, his reason to be somewhat friendly, his reason to love. All gone. We're also given the reason as to why Kitahara wanted Takigawa to be the next target. She loved Nagaoka, so now they're in the exact same mindset. They both lost their reason. This was powerful to me, especially when I had just been rejected by the girl I liked, and she started going out with my friend not soon after. I could completely relate to both Kurosawa and Kitahara in this moment. The person I once liked started to change, I grew distant from her, and decided that I wouldn't get too close to anyone else after that. I didn't want the same thing to happen to me again. Just like the person I was talking about, Takigawa also started to change. Her appearance at school, the way she talked. What Kurosawa once knew as Takigawa started to crack and break. Kurosawa also decided that he didn't want to get too close to anyone else. When Nagaoka tried to ask Kurosawa to be gym partners with him, he lashed out and screamed at him to choose someone else. Kurosawa was breaking and falling apart. He was going further down the spiral, and then he finally broke. He saw Nagaoka and Takigawa kissing. In his own words, he said, "The Takigawa Magister that I know is nowhere to be found." This was, in my opinion, one of the most powerful moments in the manga. Kinda spoke to me at the time of me reading it. It still does, don't get me wrong, but the amount it made my heart ache during that moment 2 years ago was indescribable. Kurosawa was deeply hurt, and because of that, he did something that he would later regret. He accepted Kitahara's request. He became self-loathing. He also became a shell of his former self. And as he witnessed Takigawa become hurt by Kurosawa's actions, he just stood there, feeling nothing. As life went on for Kurosawa, he mindlessly accepted requests from Kitahara, not caring anymore. He became deeply depressed and would hurt others while also hurting himself in the process. During one of his requests, he went and, on a whim, opened Takigawa's locker. There he found a drawing. It was a drawing of the time they went on that school trip. The memories started flooding back to Kurosawa, his emotions came back and he broke down looking at the drawing, apologizing over and over to Takigawa. This was, and still is, the most powerful moment in a manga for me. One of my friends who read the manga after I recommended it to him didn't understand why he changed after this, and while I explained it to him, he still didn't understand. Screw you, Jacob. Anyways, he finally understood his real faults, and understood that he deeply hurt a person who he never wished to hurt. His conscience returned and he lamented his actions. He went back, telling Kitahara that the agreement between them has ended. The next day, he confessed to the class. He confessed that he was the one that has been masturbating on girls' belongings. He then lost his place in the class. He was treated like an outcast. He was treated like he was dead. He was bullied, beaten, insulted. His teacher confronts him on the matter, telling him that he is proud that he told the truth. He also told Kitahara that he wants to move on from what he has done and never do it again. Kurosawa wanted to change. Kitahara obviously doesn't take too kindly to this. She tries to change his mind, but to no avail. And even with everything that Kurosawa's done, Nagaoka still tries to be friends with him. That's just the kind of person he is. The real MVP. Kurosawa thanks him and tells himself that he will never relinquish his friendship ever again. When Kurosawa was getting bullied, Nagaoka would come to his aid. This moment made me giddy. It was nice, and it helped me relax quite a bit from all the recent heavy chapters. Kitahara, however, she didn't have anyone there to help her. She was now being bullied by different people since Sugawa wanted to focus on exams. When Kurosawa tries to help her, she screams at him, telling him that she cannot change like he has. This makes total sense. Unlike Kurosawa, he had things that would push him to change for the better, people and moments to go back to. Kitahara did not. She seemingly never had in the first place. The person she talked to the most was Kurosawa, and you can barely call what they had a friendship. After that, Kurosawa goes to the library, where Takigawa comes to greet him. We get to know how she felt when Kurosawa confessed. She was confused and denied that he would ever do such a thing. She wanted to tell him that she forgave him, but the words never came out. She questioned why he confessed when he could have just kept it in. Nagaoka, however, understood why he did all that. It was all because he was trying to change. That's when it hits Takigawa. that they were alike and that they both wanted to change for the better. As mentioned before, we got to understand Takegawa's character a lot more when she was telling her backstory to Kurosawa. We got to see how she had to change over time for people to notice her and for people to want to be friends with her. Her backstory was honestly very powerful to me. Kurosawa was finally able to apologize to Takegawa. She forgives him, but only if he fulfills the promise that he made with her before. Kurosawa not only has a reason now, but also a purpose. His character arc is close to its end, and at this point, he was no mere character to me anymore. He was a person, and his struggles and relationships felt so real to me. The only thing left to do at this point is to close this chapter in his life as well as Kitahara's. This is done by making Kurosawa's life more melancholic while making Kitahara's filled with hate. At this point, finals are coming up and Kurosawa's entered cram school and is trying his hardest to study. At cram school, the person sitting next to him happens to be Sugawa. She's calling for help and Kurosawa answers. With her own words, she tells him that if he faps to her, she is gonna kill him. Even still, she asks for help from him. Kurosawa quickly becomes interested in her and wanted to see more of her. Meanwhile, Kitahara was at the end of her ropes. She ends up stabbing herself when she was being bullied, and Kurosawa swiftly tries to stop her from going further. And after that, she was not seen at school again. After high school started, Kurosawa goes to Kitahara's house to see her. We find out that she has slit her wrists 5 times in the last 6 months. This is around the time when I started to think, this was just supposed to be some sort of comedy, right? A bit late, yes, but it just wasn't what I was expecting when I went into this manga. And I'm sure no one else was either. Kurosawa knocks on Kitahara's door, but before we are shown what happens, it cuts to Kurosawa talking to Sugawa, telling her about the event. We can tell from this that Kurosawa and Sugawa are getting along and they have pretty much put everything that he did to her and she did to him in the past. Moving on, Kurosawa tries to bring Kitahara to the class reunion, rushing to her house and trying to convince her to come. He manages to do so and they go to the class reunion. Before they go inside, Kitahara stops and tells Kurosawa that she really can't do it. Kurosawa comforts her, telling her that by opening the door, it will be different from the usual. Kitahara opens the door and enters. Some time is skipped and we see that Kitahara is in her school uniform, showing that she is trying to change as well. This was another powerful moment in the manga for me. The author is telling us, the reader, that we can overcome hurdles and obstacles if we just put some effort into it. This and that connections are important, connections with people. Without it, we don't know what to do. We are like stuck in the dark forever. After this, we are left with the closing chapter of the manga. This chapter is dedicated to Kurosawa and Sugawa's relationship. Kurosawa questions himself, trying to understand why he's so attracted to Sugawa. And it makes sense, they're like complete opposites. Kurosawa is a pretty confident, cocky, but also quiet guy, while Sugawa is an open gal, but at the same time she is shy. She tries to indirectly ask Kurosawa on a date, and Kurosawa was gonna seize the moment until her friends came in and stopped him from doing so. Her friends ask if she wants to go to a mixer with them. She asks Kurosawa whether she should go, basically telling him to say that she shouldn't, but he tells her that she should go. This obviously makes Sugawa mad. Even still, Sugawa leaves the mixer and sees Kurosawa at his workplace. After this, they go and talk. This is when a line is said that hit harder now than 2 years ago. Why have things become so dull? Back when I was in the 10th grade, I understood this line, but I didn't feel it. When I was rereading the manga this year, it hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt the exact same. This school that I've gone to has become boring. It has nothing to offer me anymore. Working isn't fun. Talking with friends isn't that fun anymore. Relationships quickly become sour and empty. The thrill of doing things in school and outside of school disappeared, and it all just became dull. Even still, the manga tells us that there's still hope. It ends with a nice and peaceful moment where Kurosawa asks Sugawa to a date and she accepts. This manga is a roller coaster of emotions for me. It still has the same impact it did 2 years ago, and some things have an even greater impact now. It has its hilarious moments, it has great references, the art is fantastic, and the characters are some of the greatest I've read. Kurosawa and Kitahara's character arcs are amazing to me. The manga can be bleak when it wants to be, depressing, heart-wrenching, but even still, it's hopeful. It's done in a way that feels natural, without making it feel unearned. To me, this manga is very special. It has its problems here and there, but to me, Onani Master Kurosawa was, and still is, my favorite manga of all time.